Kick back, have a sit, turn it up, get your fix. Time to upgrade, augment, but stay real, this the naked patient. Come by, the doc is in, you'll understand why it's good to be Nick. Like a tattoo, these words stick. All net, never throwing up bricks. Let's grow together through the weather, we can make a dent. Authentic people sharing stories, hope that it clicks. No need to dress it up, this is real as it gets. Let's strip it down, it's the naked patient, yeah.
Hello and welcome to The Naked Patient. With me today, Mrs. Jena Hunt.
Mrs.
Sorry.
It's okay. It could be Miss. You never know.
I mean, some people are like very preferential, like it's Miss, whether they're married or not.
No, Mrs. is fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I like my husband, so I'll be a Mrs.
Yeah, I like Jamar.
Yeah, he's good.
He got thrown under the bus on my Instagram last night.
That's okay. He can take it. He can take it.
So, Jena, welcome to. I'm so glad you came on.
Thanks for having me.
We've been talking about it for months.
Yeah, and I feel like you've had a bunch of famous people, so I feel very honored to like sit here.
None more famous than you, my dear. None more famous than you.
TBD.
So we have this. You and I have kind of an interesting relationship because I met you obviously as a patient. Mm-hmm. You were referred to me by Becky, who we love. Mm-hmm. And Becky is one of our employees at Canning Crest Surgical. If you ever walk in and you see this cute little girl, cute little girl, like
ever.
That's a terrible way to describe her. Becky
no, she's adorable. She's beautiful.
Beautiful woman who helps manage up at the front desk. And she referred me to Jena after some complications, which we're going to dive into that. But I think every time we talk, we discover like a new connection that we know somebody, and not like I'll have a really close friend that you're like, oh my gosh, that's also totally my friend. Somehow we had never met.
Yeah, I don't know. We were destined.
This is a small Lake City for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so let's actually start there since I guess that's where we went. Okay. Becky refers you to me, and she came to me. She said, "Hey, I've got a friend. She had surgery with another surgeon, is not happy with her results. They tried to revise, and she's still unhappy with her results. And she's considering going back a third time, but just wants another opinion." So I told her to talk to you. Mm-hmm. That's where I'm going to let you take it from there.
Okay. So, yeah, I have been an athlete my whole life. Always, I think I got my first gym membership when I was 13 or 14. So fitness is like a huge part of what I love. It's my therapy. And I gave birth to 2 8-pound boys. I know, I'm proud of myself for that. Both of them were vaginally delivered. I'd never had a C-section. But with Bennett, I gained 80 pounds. With Hudson, I gained 65.
Holy cow.
So, I lost quite a bit of weight, got my body back the way I liked it. It was great, but I didn't have like the rib cage space for how big my kids were, and it just blew my abdominal wall, essentially, right? So I was really happy with my body, if I'm being honest. Like when I went in to talk to, quote unquote, the best, I essentially said I went in at 147 pounds and 16% body fat. Yeah. So I was not a candidate going in for like a whole makeover, which I think is great. You do you. Mine it was impacting the way I could work out because my hips always hurt. My lower back always hurt. Yeah. I could never seem to get my stomach strong no matter what I did. And I watched YouTubes. I did all the things. It's like, I have to have surgery.
And if you're so just to paint a picture, because most people are probably just listening and not watching. We do kind of put these up on YouTube for people that want to watch. But Jena is like ripped. Like I told Jena, she's got this kind of lacy shirt on that's showing off her arms, and I was like, oh, thank God I didn't wear my tight shirt because Jena's arms are like twice as big as mine.
That's funny.
No, Jena is a very fit, very tone person. And so, yeah, like even from the time I met you, like we didn't need to do any kind of liposuction. There was no fat on you, essentially.
Yeah. So mine wasn't for like aesthetics, right? I actually really liked the way my body looked and I was proud of it. I've lost damn near 150 pounds, right? I was like proud of that. I was proud that I could, give birth, be a mother, and return my body, right? And lose an immense amount of weight. So, but with my second baby, after he was born, I think he was 4 when I went in to do the surgery, because I just noticed such an impact in my training, which is something I've always loved. It's like what I do. So I went into, again, the best and said, hey, here's a blank check.
Yeah.
I have no idea what needs to be done here. I like the way I look. So it's not like you're taking, a mass amount of skin and fat off of me. It's like, I want you to repair this so that I can get out of pain and fix my umbilical hernia. Make it so that when I'm running and deadlifting and squatting and like all the things that your stomach is in charge of, all these things, like that I can feel that strength the way I would have felt it before I had kids.
Yeah.
So I said, here you go. I had been saving for a couple of years knowing, this is probably ultimately what I'm going to have to do if I want to be able to train the way I like to train. Mm-hmm. And, it was $25,000. So I gave him a check of $25,000.
Yeah.
And, again, I'm not saying this boastfully, but one of my favorite attributes of my body has always been my stomach. I've had a 6-pack my whole life. Mm. Even when I was pregnant, the midwife was like, I love your little turtle shell. Because you could like see my abs, like with my belly. So, I thought that it would be even better because then they'd be sewn together. You know what I mean? It's like, oh shoot, I'm going to look like Batman off of the Lego movie. It's like a 9-pack, right? Like this shit's going to be sick. What ended up happening is I ultimately got the wrong surgery. It was a mini tummy tuck, which essentially just sewed below my belly button. And correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding of it was it didn't do anything above my belly button.
So there's 2 things you got to know with a mini tummy. So you had what's called a mini tummy tuck with an umbilical float. So, and this is hard to just listen to. So I'm going to try and describe it as best I can for people. So the belly button is kind of like a tree stalk, and it comes up from the walls of the rectus muscles and then out to the skin where you see it. And it's got essentially two forms of blood supply. One is coming directly from the muscle, and the other comes from the skin around it. In a full tummy tuck, you are cutting skin all the way around the belly button and going above the belly button. And so you're taking away the skin blood supply. So to keep the belly button alive, you have to keep it attached to the muscle so that it has the blood flow from there. With a mini tummy tuck, you're only taking skin from below the belly button. And so the only way to get past the belly button and repair the diastasis or the separation in the ab muscles is to release the belly button from the muscle. So that's why it's called a float. You cut the stalk. And so now, since you're not cutting the skin blood supply away, you can cut the muscle blood supply away. That allows you to get up and actually sew the abs. So you had your diastasis repaired above and below the belly button, but the stalk was cut so that the skin could get pulled down and so that the repair could be done. Now, that's a fine procedure. I do that procedure, but it's only for very, very specific patients, because cutting skin only from below the belly button will not tighten skin above the belly button. And so if anybody comes in and says, hey, I have this extra skin above my belly button, immediately I'm like, you're not a candidate. You're a full tummy tuck every time. You can't do a mini. The other thing that patients have to know is, and I've had patients who I've told this to, and we've had to go back and fix it. If you do that mini tuck with a float, converting or doing a full later can be extremely difficult, because what happens is now you've cut the blood supply from the muscle to the belly button. And if you're going to go to a full and cut around the skin blood supply, now you're in big trouble, because you don't know if you're going to have enough blood supply to keep the belly button alive. And so that was the position you were in, is you came to me, still had all this extra skin above the belly button that you're like, this never got fixed. And I'm like, well, yeah, mini doesn't fix that. And we've got to do a full, but now you're at really, really high risk for losing your belly button because the stalk has been cut.
Yeah. What was the most disappointing about that is, again, because I didn't go in for aesthetics, I loved my stomach. Mm-hmm. The way it looked when it was done looked like I had been on like 600-pound life and lost a bunch of weight, and now just had like a mound of skin above my belly button. So it's like, it didn't matter what I wore. It looked like I was chubby and I don't mean that rudely at all. I'm just saying, for me, I had never experienced that. So now I have all this skin falling over my pants. Yeah. I can't wear a crop top. It's hideous in a swimsuit. You can't see my abs. Yeah. Like, it kind of just took away one of my favorite things, and something that I've had to work really hard at. It's very disciplined. And so, I got really depressed. I was very sad. I cried and cried and cried and cried. Mm-hmm. And in fact, I knew there was something wrong literally within the week of my checkup, because there was a line that was like where my skin was going, it was settling like crooked. Like, there's pictures of it like creasing crooked. Mm-hmm. And I went in on my week checkup and I was like, this just looks like really bad. Can you like help calm me down? I'm like anxious that this is like, I understand I'm swollen, but that doesn't make any sense that I would have all this like shit up here. Right? It doesn't make any sense to me. So like, Can you help me understand it? Because I really was like, you do what you need to do. You're the professional. You've gone to how many years of school? Like, you're the pro. Here's the check. Let's get it done. Sure. Right? So I thought my case was going to be super simple. I'm like, I don't know how many women come in that kind of shape and are like, okay, here you go. Right? Like,
you'd be surprised that the smaller women are actually harder. Not from a technical standpoint, but it's the way that I describe it to patients. Okay, if I have somebody who comes in and they've lost 300 pounds and we've got to cut off 15 pounds of skin and do all of this lipo and lift breasts, that's a huge transformation. Yeah. That patient is very easy to satisfy.
Totally.
Right. We're going, I don't like using a number scale, but you're going from a 3 to a 10.
100%.
And
they're stoked.
It's a huge difference.
Yeah. Their quality of life is improved like immensely. They have all that skin gone. Like, they're feeling great. Yeah, totally.
And in those patients, you have some room for error, right? Yeah. If the scar widens a little bit, if it's a little bit crooked, they're like, whatever, I can deal with this. I've had this huge change. Somebody like you comes in, little tiny bit of skin, and it's a big difference to you, but it's a very little difference overall, because now you're going from a 9 to a 10, right? That's a much harder patient to satisfy. And so expectations for those patients have to be set to an even higher degree, because you've got to know exactly what it's going to look like, and there's much less room for error in those patients. So for me, it's actually one of the harder patients to do, is somebody like you.
Yeah, having you explain it that way makes sense. In my brain, I was like, oh, hell yeah, this has got to be so easy. This is like 11 seconds. Here you go, right? So I think what bothered me the most, and has still bothered me the most, is not that it was the wrong surgery. Did it suck? Sure. It's that I had to pay. I was never, first of all, he told me he did the wrong surgery. Secondly, he told me he no longer offers that since me. That's not even a surgery he does anymore because of me. And thirdly, he made me pay for all my revisions. He never once, like, you know, it would have gone a long way for me to have him say, I'm so sorry. Whether or not he didn't think he did the right surgery or wrong surgery, I wasn't happy. And I just paid $25,000. And there's no way on God's green earth you can take my before picture and after picture and tell me that's what I'm supposed to look like.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm sorry, sir. That's apparent that you messed up. The pictures don't lie. And so then what happened is I went in and he recommended I do like a skin tightening wand, Rejuvenant, what is it?
Renuvion.
Yeah. So I paid for that.
Yeah.
And it didn't do anything. And so I didn't even make the appointment with you. My sweet friend Becky, she literally, I kind of had a breakdown in the gym with her because we'd been working out together.
Yeah.
And I did add a full come apart because I was so sad. I've spent the better part of 20 years lifting and working out and loving my body, being proud of my body, being proud that people see me work and they're like, damn, that chick works out hard. Like, I like that. I'm not doing it for the attention. I like that. It's for me. It feels good. So to then look at my body and not even feel like I recognize it, it was hard. Like, it was really hard.
Yeah.
So Becky was like, it was then told, hey, you need a full, and I was going to have to pay him another $23,000 for the full. And I didn't know any better. I literally thought I was going to the best. So she was like, listen, maybe just get a couple consults. And I was like, I don't know. She's like, she called me. I'll never forget. I was at work. She called me and she's like, hey, I made you an appointment and you're going to meet with Howland. And I don't know what day it was, like Thursday or whatever. You're going to come and meet with Howland, 1:00 this day.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And I was like, shit. Okay. And I went in, I met you, we talked, and it was immediate. Like, yeah, you got me. I cried. I was like, okay, like, I feel totally safe. Like, he understands. And yeah, so then you did my full, and even with, some of the complications, because it was a harder surgery, round 2, which you explained going into it. Even with all of the chaos of like wound healing and getting back, it's like, I don't regret it for a second, because my stomach is exactly what I thought it was supposed to look like from the onset. And more importantly, I can tell a difference in my performance. My stomach is 100% sewn back together. It's like, I can feel it in my hips. I can feel it when I deadlift. I can feel it when I squat. I can feel it when I do sit-ups. It's like, this is exactly what I wanted.
Well, let me thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you. But I do want to go back to kind of when we first met, and I want to talk a little to like the complexity of your surgery, because one area where you and I are always going to disagree is that I don't think that the surgeon did anything wrong. And you feel differently, and I know that, because this is your body and your story. And I told you from the start, hey, I don't know that anything was done wrong here, because there's a lot of bad plastic surgery in Utah, and most of it comes from people who are not board certified. And
that's terrifying.
It is terrifying.
That is terrifying.
Most of the board certified guys here are excellent surgeons. They're well trained, and there's very little variation, right? Some of them market better than others, and but there's really very little variation what this person's going to do versus the other board certified surgeon. And I think there was a error in communication for sure, and untalked about expectations. I think you went into that surgery having no idea that this wasn't going to touch anything above your belly button.
Zero.
And that's a huge error. That's an error in communication, in my opinion. And so I will, and every time we talk and it comes up, I'm like, hold on, don't throw him or her under the bus.
Yeah.
Because this is plastic surgery, and this is.
Sure. I understand that. I think for me, it's like, it's a choice, right? I made that choice. I paid that money. And at the end of the day, like if you are board certified qualified surgeon, you're providing a service. You're solving a problem. Mm-hmm. So when you are in quote unquote the service industry and a patient comes and they're upset, my personal view is that you take care of that patient, because 100%. That's exactly what they are. They are your patient.
Yeah, 100%.
So my most frustrated feelings and disappointment was the lack of care and concern for me as a patient about how unhappy I was. And that I would have to pay again to be quote unquote resolved and happy. It's like, I personally feel like you should have offered that. You should have said, okay, I'm so sorry if there was a miscommunication, if I misunderstood something, right? Whatever. But because there was never any of that, I talked to his staff more than I did him. That's disappointing to me. I think, like, again, the reason why I ended up going with you is, one of the things you shared with me was you lose, a certain amount of money every year by doing more in office visits with your patients, right? Versus going into surgeries.
Well, I believe this exact same thing that you do, which is you take care of your patients, you take care of your people. And this is one big area of variation you'll find among plastic surgeons, right? So I'm in a group with 4 surgeons, and every one of us approach this very differently. I come from a standpoint, I think you take care of the person. And so if all of us have a paper that you sign when you go into surgery that says, hey, this is plastic surgery. It's not an exact science. You might need a revision. Here's what it costs if a revision is needed. Here's the surgeon's costs. Here's the anesthesia costs. And everybody signs it, says, I understand this. Mm-hmm. To me, and you need that for legal reasons, right? And to me, though, that document is for nitpicky things. If somebody comes in and is like, I'm a millimeter off here, or this is just a little bit off, I have the option to say, great, here's the fee schedule.
Totally.
This is, let's tweak it, because I want you to be happy. But if somebody comes in and there's something obvious, I'm like, yeah, you know what? Like, this is not good enough. I am your surgeon, and this is my work. Yeah. This is not good enough. Let's take care of you. And so my personal rule is that first time, if we have to go back, I usually will not charge my fee at all, and it's just the cost of anesthesia. Yeah. And then if they come back a third time and it's still not right, and they're like, hey, we're still not right, then I pay for the whole thing. I don't charge my fee, and I pay the anesthesiologist. I have patients that I have paid more out of my own pocket to get them right than I ever made on their initial surgery. And that's not a look at me tooting my own horn. I just think that that's the right way to treat your patients.
Yeah, I agree. I 100% agree.
And there are surgeons that will widely disagree with me.
Yeah.
And I get it, because from a business standpoint, that's a terrible fucking model.
Yeah, but from a human standpoint, it's a great model. So I think there's, an argument there that if someone's trusting you, I mean, how is there anything more vulnerable than being butt ass naked on a table, no. Passed out with there's no way that I'm going to know anything that goes on. Mm-hmm. I am putting full trust in you.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you are taking a freaking knife to my body. Like, I'm trusting you. So I just don't know if there's a more vulnerable situation that you could put yourself in, and kind of hand over the keys to someone else that, I feel like that needs to be treated and regarded as such. because okay, great. You make a great living, as you should. You're qualified to do it. But sometimes those qualifications and the patient and whatever don't line up. So when you come to that fork in the road, I think you choose the person.
Yeah.
I think you forfeit the money and you choose the person to make them happy, because that person then is going to go tell 500 other people about how great you are.
Yeah. And on the flip side of that, I have patients that are not happy, that are probably in another podcast with another surgeon talking about
he who shall not be named.
The results that they don't like that were from me. And that is part of the job. I get that. I will always do everything I can to help my patients. I talked about taking care of patients on my podcast, I don't know, a few weeks ago. And a former patient reached out or publicly posted on Instagram that I strongly disagree with this. I'm still not happy with my with my surgery, and it's $5,000 to revise it, and I can't afford that. And that hits me personally. I'm really that's this kind of stuff that keeps me up at night. I can have 1,000 happy patients, with that one unhappy patient is gonna just eat me alive. And I went back and I looked, and that $5,000 is the cost of anesthesia and the cost of implants. I don't make a dime on that case. It probably cost me money at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And so, and I even wrestled with, oh my gosh, do I reach out to this patient and say, you know what, well, let's do it, and we'll eat it and I'll pay it. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, again, you're in a service industry, so you're not going to be able to satisfy everybody.
Yeah.
But I think when you are working and are integritous and you are sincerely trying, right? It's still a business. So you got to make those decisions. Yeah. But when you're intentional about making it about the person first, then I feel like there's always going to be a couple that are just going to be disappointed. And I would say they're probably disappointed with a lot in their life, not just their boobs. Because, people that are unhappy are unhappy about a lot of things, not just their boobs. Yeah. So for what that's worth, I think, even just saying hey, I'm not even going to take the fee, but obviously the building, there's lights, there's power, there's things that have to go on here. Yeah. You got to pay for that. And then I'll take care of the rest. It's that's 10 times more than what I got. Yeah. I never got offered that. I paid for everything both times. And then I was going to have to pay for the third time. So yeah, I know we disagree about that, but I just disagree because, I'm kind of a no bullshit chick. Yeah. You get that, right? So when I walk in and I say,
the payment stuff, I'm on your side.
1,000%. Here's a blank check. Yeah. Do what is the best thing to do? Yeah. I want you to, here's my problems. What would you do? Yeah. If you maybe picked the wrong choice because I'm uneducated or I don't know, I'm a civilian, I didn't go to medical school, I have no freaking clue.
Or even if it was just, hey, we didn't understand each other.
Yeah, totally. There was a misfire. I'm sorry, right? I will leave that there. But it was difficult for me. It was really difficult for me because I was honest. I asked multiple times. I've gone back since. Yeah. There's never been an apology. There's never been, I was wrong, the patient. And so that's what bothered me. It's dude, you suck. I'm sorry. That's just bad. That's just a bad way to treat somebody. I'm not asking you to forfeit your practice. I'm asking you to repair what happened. Sure. And not make me pay $50,000 for it. Sure.
That I am on your side on.
Yeah. So,
okay, fast forward.
That's how I met you.
Fast forward though, because you made it sound like we just did this quick little operation and it was all perfect.
It was not quick.
No.
It sucked ass.
So we had to convert you to a full tummy tuck, which we talked about this before. You've had a float procedure. So now if we do a full, you're super high risk for the belly button dying. So we did something called a delay procedure. And what that means is once you've had a mini and you've pulled that belly button down, in theory, once the bottom, the stalk that's been cut has healed back down to the abdomen wall, the body will start to grow new blood vessels into it. But you don't know that. And so a delay procedure is where we brought you in the office, we numb you up, and we cut all of the skin around the belly button, specifically to release all the blood flow that the skin was providing. And what that does is if there is new blood flow coming into the stalk, then the belly button will stay alive and we'll know it's alive and it's got blood flow. The other thing it will do is will cause what's called choke dilation, where if some of the blood supply is cut off, the blood supply that remains is now going to get more signals to grow bigger, grow more blood flow into that tissue. And so we did this delay procedure, and I, to be honest, had never done one for a belly button.
YOLO.
And I know. And I think I told you, like, hey, I've never done this.
Yeah.
If your belly button dies in 3 days, we'll talk. But this is the risk we're taking. And you're like, if that's what we got to do to fix this. So we did it, and the belly button was alive.
It's the trust I had in you.
And then we went a couple weeks later to do the full. And when we converted to the full, I told you the same thing. I was like, hey, this is, third time surgery's been done on this belly button. You don't have enough skin to get all the way above where the belly button is. So you'll probably get a little bit of a vertical scar as well. We can treat that later. But there's a lot of energy that's already been put into the skin and tissue. So we did the operation, went beautifully. And then a week later, 2 weeks later?
Yeah. 10 days.
Yeah. About 10 days later, that T-junction. So you had a little vertical scar, horizontal scar. That's where all the tension is. And that started to break down. Yeah. And we ended up with a decent size open wound.
It was crazy.
For a while.
It was crazy. Yeah, it was. I ended up having 3. That was the biggest one. And then 2 smaller ones on my right side also separated. And I had to, I'd never had a C-section before. So I now have a scar hip to hip. It's like, whoa, right? And then I'm like, dude, I have a big ass hole that's like open. Yeah. What am I supposed to do? I'd never done wound care before. Yeah. So I had to do wound care and packet, wound vac twice.
Yeah, we had a lot of hand holding.
I packed that wound for it to grow basically back together for what?
3 months.
Yeah. 3 months.
Yeah.
Daily packing, morning and night.
Yeah.
Which again was a huge emotional and mental and spiritual heartache. Like I cried. I was really, really sad. Yeah. But to your credit, I don't think I would have gotten through that if I wouldn't have had you as my surgeon, because it meant so much to me that you gave me your cell phone number, which I know sounds so dumb, but like when you're awake at 1 a.m. and you're sad and your thoughts are dark, to know that you can text you and that you like care to reply, it does. It brought me a lot of peace. It brought me a lot of comfort to know like, okay, if this shit's going down, like if my fucking tank is just going down, I can text Nick. I can text Nick and say, I can send him pictures, be like, WTF, help me through this. Like, I don't understand what's happening. It's scary. It's like your skin's dying, right? Like it's really, really scary. And I think it's perspective. Having gone through what I had gone through with the previous surgeon, there was very little communication. There was no cell phones given. I talked to a lot of staff. I never talked to the actual chief. It was nice to know that, the chief. I could talk to the chief to say like, hey man, what's going on here? Can you help me? Yeah. Brought me a lot of comfort through something that was I was very depressed. It was really dark.
So how did this is for my own understanding and benefit, because your wound starts opening up, and I had told you before, and hey, this is a huge possibility. Like, we're going to have some wound healing issues.
Well, at that point, it's like third time the skin had been cut.
Yeah.
At that point.
And for me, like, when I have patients with wounds like that, I present a very calm front, like, just got to pack it, got to do the wound care. But inside, I mean, you're killing yourself inside because you don't want this to happen, even though this is a possibility. And those are the patients that you constantly worry about. But what I want to know, how did you go from having an operation with the first time where you're like, oh, this guy screwed up, to having an operation where you've got this big open wound and you're like, well, he seems to know what he's doing?
It honestly came down to, I trusted you. I felt safe with you. I felt that regardless of the outcome, like, you were with me in my journey and you cared about me as a person, not just a $25,000 check. That amidst all of your other people that you were caring for, all the other surgeries you're doing, the nights you're not sleeping, you have children, you have a darling girlfriend, right? You have you are a person too. You are a son, like, you're an uncle, you're like all these, you play all these roles. And I just felt so, I was just astonished that you gave me your personal cell phone number, which I know you give all your patients, which just shook me, because I thought, oh my gosh, he's probably just getting blasted all the time.
Yeah.
And yeah, but you made me always feel like I was the only person you were talking to. And so I felt like, because you made me feel that way, I knew that I was going to be fine. I knew that even if it took 3 months for the wound to heal, I could talk to you for all 3 months, right? Sure. Like, I could talk to you anytime I needed to talk to you and ask you, like, hey, what, this looks weird today, or whatever. So that's why I, even with the wounds, what did we say? It was like my second butthole or something. It was just something egregious. It was, yeah, we made fun of it. It had a name. It was a whole thing.
Here's a funny story. I think you've heard this story, but, I went to this is where our paths kind of crossed again too. I went to a jazz game that our buddy Dan had invited me to. And so we're in a suite, and Dan's got a bunch of his friends there, and there's people I know and people I don't know. And this one girl, we'll keep her name out of it, but she comes up to me and she's like, I think my friend Jena. And I said, oh yeah, I do. And I'm like, I don't really talk about patients, but I'll acknowledge whether I know somebody. And she's like, this other surgeon completely screwed her up. Look at this. And she shows me a picture of your tummy after I had operated on
full
you
wounds
with this open wound. And I'm like, that is my patient.
Yeah, totally.
That is my tummy.
What's so crazy is, even in the context of that text, like, yeah, I wish she would have showed you the context of the text, because I said, okay. It does matter, because I said, even with all this happening, I feel like it's going to be fine. But it was like, there's no way that you can't look down at your stomach and see 3 gaping holes and be like, WTF. It's terrifying, right? And I was packing it with gauze and taking it out with tweezers, and everything had to be so sanitized because you have an open wound.
Yeah.
So it's like 24/7 vigilance of making sure everything's sterilized. And I, put my tweezers in boiling water and did all these things before I touched anything. Like, it was a whole process for a really long time. But again, you went in and fixed the scar, January?
Yeah, I think with January, we finally said, okay, because it finally heals, right? When wounds like that finally heal. And the frustrating thing for patients is that you get a breakdown like that and they're like, just sew it back together, man. And you can't do that. The tissue's too friable. It's too fresh. It just will fall apart. So the only choice is wound care and let it heal on its own. And that gets really fresh because it's 3 months, right? Of your body healing that wound. So when it finally does, you've got this big wide scar, and we finally were able to do your scar revision in January.
Yeah. And I'm tickled pink. I don't love that I have a scar hip to hip, but that's, again, I think for me, I didn't go in for aesthetics. I went in for like athletic feeling.
Function.
Yeah. Function. Yes, exactly. So aesthetically, I don't love having a scar, but I'm just planning a tattoo and I'll get it sorted and it's fine. But to like couple with that, even from the beginning, with my wound stuff and the second surgery, when you fixed everything, you covered every single one of my laser treatments. Took my hand and said, "Okay, come with me." Walked me over to the Clarity Skin, said, "This is Jena. Anything she wants is on me."
Yeah.
Okay, well, I just need people out there to hear that because no one else does that.
See, and I don't know. For me, like I said, this is not a rah Dr. Howland podcast, and I just
Well, it should be.
I hear that and I'm like, well, yeah, that's just what you should do.
But most people don't, and I think that's what I'm saying. Like, at the end of the day, I'm still a human being, right? And so to be treated as one and not just like a dollar or a check or whatever, or that you have 25 other patients on your waiting list waiting to pay you for these surgeries. It's like you took me by the hand, you walked me to the clinic, you said, "Whatever she wants, it's on me." Yeah. And I think I did 8 or 9 laser treatments on my scar to kind of help it, settle down because it'd been cut 3 times. So it was pretty wild. But, I've never, ever said anything, even with wounds, even with whatever, anything has come out of my mouth other than how much I love you.
Well, I adore you. I think you're an amazing person. I think one of my favorite things about, here's the thing about giving my cell phone out. I learned this from my ex-wife's cousin and uncle. So they were both surgeons that I followed while I was kind of still training. And they both gave out their cell phone to their patients. And I thought that was such a unique touch. And I remember Ken Warnock, that's my ex-wife's uncle, and he was a bariatric surgeon, like one of the pioneers of bariatric surgery in Texas. And he was just like, "Nick, this will save you so much heartache and grief. Your patients will feel more connected to you. And this is one of the most important things you can do. Give them direct access." And I think the benefit that I didn't even realize is I get so much satisfaction out of the connection I develop with my patients. So at the end of the day, a lot of surgeons and doctors go into that because of human connection. Like we want to help people. Like people going to nursing, people going to healthcare in general. Like you want to help people. That's your love language, or that's where you thrive. That's where your dopamine hits come from.
Your problem solving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the connections though that I developed, like I legitimately become friends with a lot of my patients.
Yeah.
And like you and I have become friends through this whole
100%.
process.
You're my homie. Like,
Absolutely.
yeah, you're my friend. 100%.
So that is going to be our segue into what I want to talk about next.
Oh my. Okay.
Because listen, your surgery story is interesting. I was glad I was able to help, but that's the least interesting thing about you. So, and you didn't share this with me. Somebody else had told me like, "Oh, you don't know her story." And I was like, "No, what do you mean?" Like, she's a cool chick. Like she's married to this guy, Jamar, who like used to play in the NFL and he's amazing. And they're like, "No, like you don't know what she's been through." I'm like, "What? Like, was she born middle class in Utah? What's happened here?" And they're like, "No, like she was a widow." And I was like, there's a whole trauma that you went through early on in life.
Yeah. I was raised in Cedar Hills, Utah, and I did come from a kind of middle class, I guess, type of deal. Definitely not rich like Alpine kids. I drove a 1990 Toyota Corolla. So definitely not
like Alpine kids.
Yeah, no, I was rolling in with like my huge, muffler that I could never sneak out because you could hear that thing from a mile away. But, yeah, I was raised, it was kind of crazy. Both my brothers struggled deeply with drugs. So I was around and introduced to things at a really young age. At 13, I was detoxing rooms and taking heroin balloons and syringes out of the house and just kind of crazy stuff. So I grew up a lot faster than I wanted to.
Yeah.
Kind of was expected of me. And then, I went to college, did my thing, had a great time. I married Greg, was my first husband, June 5th, 2010. And we had a beautiful son together. His name is Bennett, and he is my birth control baby. I was so not ready to be a mom. He was not planned, but he obviously knew he needed to come. And my husband was killed in a car accident, January of 2014. And Bennett was 18 months old, at the time of his passing. And, so there I was 25, 26. I was a widow.
How old was Greg when he passed?
He was 8 years older than me. So he would have been like 31, 32. And it's hard. Like he and I had a really, we had a hard marriage, and I'm inherently deeply private. So it's no surprise I didn't share anything with you. But the older I've gotten, it's been almost a decade, right? And I have grown so much through that time that I want to help people. I want to share what I've gone through. I want to maybe shed light, even if it's just impacted one person. It's like because I chose to speak up, that one person's life's changed.
Yeah.
So, anyway, he and I had a really hard marriage, and I always felt so badly about that because I know we both tried so hard.
Yeah.
It was just we were an inherent mismatch.
Yeah.
He was very thoughtful. He liked to think through things immensely. And it's not that I don't, but I would consider myself far more a doer than a thinker. Like I think that there's a time and a place for both. But I tend to err on the side of like, we just need to get shit done.
Yeah.
Right? Which I can be insensitive to people that need to feel things. Like that's, again, something I've had to evolve and grow and mature in. Because I'm like, what are we talking about here? Let's go. There's stuff to get done. Yeah. Right. So that was hard for us. That was hard because I always thought he was complaining and he always thought I was insensitive.
I can see that.
Yeah. So, and he was 8 years older than me. So, there was a component of like, maybe he thought I was really immature or whatever. We didn't like click the way that I had wanted to click in a marriage. And so we were, in fact, we had finally come to a space in our marriage. We'd only been married, a couple years, and we both were like, okay, we don't have kids. We're young. I was like 23, 24. It's like, dude, let's just go out and like, we can be best friends. We don't have to like hate each other. Yeah. This doesn't have to be terrible. And so we went out to, back home to where he was from on like a we had like planned, like, okay, yeah, when we get back from this trip, because that trip was already paid for, we were going to just like go our separate ways.
Yeah.
Well, little burrito, B Master P, as we call him, Bennett, I was pregnant. So tried to stick it out the last little bit. And then, yeah.
Was there any point in that where he, and I'm not trying to shed negative light on him at all. I just wonder if
Sure.
At any point was he like, this, you trapped me.
Oh, no.
This was a save the marriage baby.
Oh, no. In fact, when the doctor... So I took 5 pregnancy tests, and they were all negative.
Yeah.
All negative. So when we got back, I'm like, dude, I might have like uterine cancer or something. Like, I'm not kidding. I was like, I am cramping so badly. Like, something is inside of me and it's trying to kill me. Like, I was in so much pain.
Which was true.
It was true. It was Bennett. But I was in so much pain and I could not figure out what was going on. I was like, I'm not pregnant. I've taken 5. We had a layover in Vegas and I went and bought a pregnancy test in Vegas.
Yeah.
Peed in the airport bathroom. Another negative. Never did a positive.
I think Vegas plans their pregnancy tests that way.
I tried at 4 different airports, man. They're all negative. Because I didn't want to go out and like, drink and hang out and do stuff if I had a baby.
Yeah.
Right. So, sorry, Bennett. I did because I didn't think I was pregnant. So, yeah.
Bennett's listening. This explains so much.
Yeah, he's like, it all makes sense, Mom. Yeah. So I, came back from that trip still we ended up going to the doctor, I think 10 days later. Mm-hmm. We'd come home and I just had immense cramps and I was like, dude, something's wrong. So we went to the doctor. The doctor came in. He said, I'm pregnant. I started bawling and Greg's face just turns pure white. So no, he was not like, you trapped me. It was 100% not planned. I was religious about my birth control pills.
Yeah.
I think that whoever is in charge anywhere, the cosmos, the stars, Bennett himself, knew that he needed to be here.
Yeah.
And could foresee what would happen. And he was my little anchor after Greg died.
Yeah.
But it was hard because I'm so private. It was like I had to grieve, but I had already grieved the loss of my marriage.
Yeah.
Right? And then he was gone. And it was like everyone around me was like, I just felt like they expected me to be in grieving. And I was. Greg was a dear friend. Like I would never want anyone to die. He's my son's father.
Yeah.
Right? Like I was grieving that his life was lost and that, Bennett would never know him and he would never know him. Like, I still cry about that where I'm like, I'll watch Bennett do something and I'm like, damn, Greg would love to see that. That's hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard. I think about it all the time. So it's like, of course I'm sad that he's gone. But it's different than like if Jamar were to pass, right? Like I'm so deeply in love with my husband now and we have such an amazing marriage that it's like that connection is, I wouldn't know what to do because I had already kind of mourned the loss of that relationship with Greg.
Yeah.
So then I was mourning the loss of him as an individual, but not necessarily the loss of a husband.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, that makes a ton of sense.
And I got a lot of shade for how quickly I moved on. It didn't feel like, it was difficult. It was really difficult. I did not feel supported.
Yeah.
And
which is silly because people just don't understand.
They don't understand at all. I went through listen, my spouse didn't die, but we got divorced. And I remember being really, we were both dating other people.
but I had to go to this divorce class. Okay. And this guy talked about this at the divorce class because I was still struggling with the loss of my marriage. I hadn't grieved my marriage. And so there was still a lot of anger, especially when I would see her dating, even though I was also dating.
Yeah.
And so this guy talked about it, where he's talked about his marriage, where he's like, I walked in to my divorce and I was just like in shambles and crying, and my wife is like ecstatic. It's the best day of her life.
Yeah.
And he's like, but that's when I realized like grieving a relationship happens on a different time frame for everybody. He's like, she had grieved our marriage years ago.
Yeah.
So of course she was done. She had been done for years.
Yeah.
And I realized that I was kind of in that exact same boat. Like my ex-wife had grieved that relationship way before me.
Yeah.
I think, I don't want to put words in her mouth, but that was something that at least helped me understand my feelings of anger and frustration, because I still hadn't fully grieved that relationship. So I completely understand.
Yeah. And you don't, I think, one of the moments of growth for me and maturity for me was after he passed away. I was just, I had obviously, I got into therapy right away because I didn't know anything. I mean, I still don't know anything, but I certainly didn't know anything at 25, and I have this baby and I'm by myself and I'm like, I don't know what the hell to do.
Yeah.
Right. Like I wasn't even prepared to be a mother, let alone a widow. Yeah. Like I was not planning any of this. I was really, really just felt very unqualified to be in the position of now, like you're the sole breadwinner and you have sole responsibility of this child.
Yeah.
Right. So I got into therapy, like right away. And one of the things that the therapist told me was, you can't ever show or express emotion in front of Bennett because he's going to think it's his fault. Like he's too young to understand. Mm-hmm. And I don't necessarily think that was bad advice, but I think that's what locked me up.
Like any emotion at all?
I mean, maybe he didn't mean it that way, but I took it so literally because I was so hell-bent on not messing it up for Bennett, right? Like I just took that responsibility so seriously that I was like, okay, well, shit, right? Like it's on lockdown then. Yeah. So I just did not express anything about it. It was in the depths. So I remember, my parents were watching him and I went to the grocery store and for some reason, like I'll never forget it. It was a Tuesday. I had a full on breakdown in the grocery store. It was like the first time I had like wept. Mm-hmm. And I just kind of thought like, I looked around and everybody was just shopping and they were just doing their own thing. And I was like, it's just like a normal fucking Tuesday for everybody. And I'm dying. Like I'm dying, like I didn't even know if I could like drive home because I was so upset. And that experience truly has changed my life because you never know what Tuesday it is for somebody.
Yeah.
It might be their Tuesday. So it's like, be nice. You have no idea what someone's suffering with internally. You have no idea what their day was like, what their month was like, what they're experiencing. And it was just a very pivotal moment for me that I'm grateful happened to me in my young 20s, because I certainly feel like that has made me such a better person. Mm-hmm. And I got to be that. I get to continue to be that way. But I got to learn it really young. Sometimes people come to that reckoning older and then they look back and they're like, damn, right? Like, I wish I would have treated people differently all those years ago.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful that I learned that at a really young age or younger so that I could be conscious and be more aware of how I was treating others, because I didn't know if it was their Tuesday or not.
I love that. Here's somebody the other day asked me, and they're like, why do you put all these people with sad stories and trauma on your podcast? And here's the thing, though. It's very, I don't just put people on here who've had shit happen in their life. Okay, because we've all had shit happen in our life.
Who doesn't? Yeah.
The key is I put people on here who have found the gift in those things, who have decided, you know what, I'm not a victim to that story anymore. And I do that very consciously because that took me 40 fucking years to figure out.
Yeah.
And
it's a hard process.
Yeah. And in the last year and learning that and in changing my story, I'm like, okay, now we got to share with everybody.
Yeah.
Look, like we got to tell everybody, look for the gift in these things that are your story. Like, what are you holding on to? What are you constantly blaming? That's also the reason that I'm so adamant with you about stop it. This surgeon didn't fuck up. Okay. You guys had an error in miscommunication.
Yeah.
And so don't make that your story.
Yeah. It's true.
But anyway, I love what you have figured out. And that whole saying that you have, you don't know whose Tuesday it is.
Yeah.
Is really beautiful.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I hope I'm not perfect, but I certainly try really hard to be aware of when people are, pissy or rude or freak out or whatever. My first reaction is usually to try to figure out, okay, it could be their Tuesday, right? So it's like, I'm grateful for that lesson, because prior to that, man, I fought a lot in high school. I was kind of a punk. Like I went through a lot of hardships in my youth that the way I dealt with that was by being, Billy Badass.
Yeah.
So it's like I had this whole wall of like, dude, you're not going to get to me.
How do you not? You're cleaning up heroin users at 10 years old.
Yeah. Crazy stuff. But having gone through that, it really did. It was like, okay, wow. Like I can't treat people like that, because maybe all those people I treated that way in my youth and my teens and previously, maybe it was their Tuesday. Yeah. And now I'm having this moment in my own life where it's like, all I want is someone to hold me.
Yeah. And
be kind to me and support me, So it's like, if I can offer that to someone, if I can give that to someone, I would be so grateful that I got to do that. Yeah. So, yeah.
You are an incredible human being, and I love you.
I love you too. And
I do want to ask about.
Sure.
So you have two boys.
I do.
So one is Jamar's.
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah.
Tell me about that dynamic.
Yeah. So after Greg passed, he passed away in January.
Because let's talk up Jamar a little bit before we end.
He's the best. I met Jamar in March, actually. So that's what I mean by people were like, whoa.
Sure.
My honest belief is that Greg passed and he handpicked him and put him in my life. Mm-hmm. He adopted my son, Bennett. So he adopted him when he was, I think, 4. Mm-hmm. And he had 2 boys from his first marriage. So my husband was married previously, and they had 2 boys together. Then he adopted Bennett. So when we married, we had a 4-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 2-year-old. All boys. How we made it through that, I don't know. It's a testament of true love. Mm-hmm. And then we had Hudson. Hudson's our child. He's 6. So we had Hudson, and then no more. We waited to find out his gender at birth. Okay. And when he came out a boy, I was like, okay, we're done. Yeah, we're good.
But that's truly like a blended family. So Jamar's got 2 from another marriage. You have Bennett from Greg, and then you guys have Hudson together. It's
been hard. It's been really hard. It's been, Jamar, he played, professional football. He's very A-type. So it's been interesting to raise. And then Bennett is very sensitive. And I'm very A-type. Sometimes I'm like, I don't even know how I gave birth to you. You know what I mean? Like Bennett's like totally fine taking third. And it's like, oh no, I was like suspended in the 4th grade from like ripping a girl's ponytail back so I could be first at the drinking fountain. I'm like, no, man, we're not taking third in anything. You got to go win. But he has taught me, he's totally 100% the best thing ever. He is so, 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 so kind.
Yeah.
So it's been hard to figure out how to, his youngest with his first wife and Bennett are 7 months apart in age. Mm-hmm. And they're very different. And so for the first 4 or 5 years of our marriage, I was like, I don't think we're going to work. Like, this is terrible because his youngest is A-type, wants to kick everybody's ass.
Yeah.
And Bennett's like really sensitive and is typically the one getting picked on. And so me being mama bear.
Yeah. And listen, I don't care who you are. I've been in relationships with women who have kids of their own, and you try to blend it, and you can be the best person in the world and say, I love these kids just as if they were my own. But there's always that instinctual protection for your child.
Always. Yeah.
It doesn't go away.
No. And I love Jamar's kids. I mean, they call me mom. They've always called me mom. I changed their diapers. Yeah. I was up with them when they were puking and they were babies. So I've been in their lives longer than they knew their mom and dad being married.
Yeah.
Right. So, but it is always that. It's just that way. Like he is that way with his biological sons and I'm that way with my biological sons, and trying to like navigate that where it doesn't feel blended.
Yeah.
Is hard. Cause it's like, I don't want them to feel like I care any less. Cause I don't, but that instinct of like, you touch my kid again, I'm gonna freaking pull your hair out. You know what I mean? Like that instinct of like, you do that one more time, I'm a, right? Yeah. It's like, you can't, but he's your son too. He's your child too.
Yeah.
So it was really, really difficult to navigate, but I think we're through the thick of it. They say the 7-year curse. That was true. 7 years sucked ass. I love you, babe. If you listen to this,
that like he is just listening to that, like just listening, like what he came into and what you guys blended together. Like you're obviously both very special, unique people. It took a very special, unique person to come in and say, oh, here is a new widow with a brand new child. Yeah. And I have 2 children. Sure. Let's figure this out.
I'll never forget what he said to me. I was very intimidated by...
No sex is that good. That's just...
I don't know. He's going to love that plug. I'm just teasing. But no, one of the things that I was really intimidated by was that he was with his first wife for 15 years. Mm-hmm. So they had dated through high school. They're married for 10. He's very... he was Mormon, mm-hmm. raised very Mormon, did the whole thing, temple, mission, did the whole gig. Mm-hmm. I am not. So when he met me, it was almost like, his marriage ended because of infidelity. Mm-hmm. And so I was really intimidated by like, you have like 15 years with this one person.
Yeah.
I've got like 11 seconds of marriage and it did not end well. Yeah. And I don't know what I'm doing. And I was really heartbroken. And I remember like we had maybe been dating 6 or 7 months, and I kind of had a breakdown in his living room. And he just said, my husband has huge hands. Okay. He's 6'7", so he has like huge monster paws. And he holds up his hands to me and he said, baby, look at my hands. I said, okay. He said, these are the best hands in the state. I'm never going to drop you. And I was like,
what a cute little football player.
I know, it's so cute, but it really it just made me feel so safe. Like I was like, okay, like he's going to catch me like no matter what.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter like my baggage or my stuff or my story or like my isms, like whatever it is, like Jamar has me.
Yeah.
You know, and I could not be more grateful for that.
Yeah.
I could not be more grateful for that.
Yeah. You guys, I love that story because it's such a beautiful comparison between masculine and feminine energy. Because you are a lot of, I'm sorry, like listen to me here. A lot of people are going to listen to that and be like, oh, here's a, you know, needy girl relying on her man. And that's her horse. Like, no, Jena is a very independent woman who can do what she wants.
We do not share bank accounts. Let's just say that.
With or without anybody. And but you guys also carry your masculine and feminine in such a beautiful way that you know that it's just support. Together, you guys are stronger. Yeah.
And I think that, you know, both having been, you know, our spouses had, you know, outside people or whatever during our relationships. It takes a lot to like put that trust back into somebody, right? Where you're like, okay, I'm like totally trusting you here because I got way screwed. I think because we both shared that, and we were so honest from the beginning, like he had just gotten divorced when we met, and I had just lost my husband when we met. So our emotions and our feelings were at like, I could give a shit if you like me. I'm being serious. And I honestly think that's why like our foundation was so strong, because I was like, dude, I don't care if you ever talk to me again. Right. Like, and he kind of felt the same way. We were not in a space where we were trying to fall in love or trying to be in a relationship. We were really wounded. Yeah. You know, his marriage had ended. He's the only person in his whole family that had ever gone through a divorce. Yeah. His parents are high school sweethearts and been married for a million years and blah, blah, blah. So he was like going through all this stuff where he's like, I'm the only one that got divorced. I couldn't make this work. What's wrong? Right. Like he was in his own space and I was in my own space. And so because we were both meeting at that junction, when we spoke, there was no regard. There was no holding back. It was like as honest and as raw as you could get. And because we both just accepted that and just genuinely fell in love with that person, it's just been easy ever since, because it was like, I saw his ugliest and he saw my ugliest on like the fourth date. Yeah. Right. Like I remember I made fun of him because he's Mr. Athlete and he's so tall. I think our third date, I was like, can you even like run athletically because you're so tall? And he got so butthurt about that. But I loved that I didn't care if he ever called me again. Like I could just totally be myself, and great. If you call me, great. If you don't, great. So I am grateful that we met the way we met and when we met. And again, I genuinely believe like, you know, Greg's passing, he just handpicked him. It's like, here you go. Yeah. You know, because he's an amazing father, and he's an amazing father to Bennett. And I'm so honored that Bennett gets to have his last name. Yeah. It's something I thought about for a long time, and I'm grateful for it. Yeah. Well, it's a beautiful story. It is. And I think it's a powerful story. Thank you. And I'm so happy you came and shared it today. Thank you for having me. Getting your ass up early. Seriously. I drove to Orem, people. All right, guys. Thanks for listening today. Thank you so much for listening to The Naked Patient Beyond the Operating Room. I'm Dr. Nicholas Howland. Please remember that every patient who appears on this podcast has consented to discuss their story and their surgery on the podcast. That way we remain HIPAA compliant. This is a free podcast. The best thing that you can do for us is to leave us a review online. Let us know what you liked. Let us know what you'd like to hear. Let us know how we can improve. If you are curious about anything related to plastic surgery, you can reach out to me on Instagram at Dr. Nicholas Howland, and I typically respond there, or you can reach us at the office at 801-571-2020, or we have an online form you can fill out at the website, www.howlandplasticsurgery.com. Any of our coordinators would be happy to help you. Thanks again for listening. Thanks for listening to the Naked Patient Podcast. Stay tuned for the next episode. Till next time.